at the end of the day, we gotta make some more shots. I think my turnovers and my missed free throws cost us a game, so I gotta do way better in those two categories. But at the end of the day, we gotta make shots to win the game.
This is a team game. He's not alone, and we're going to tell him that. But, as expected, he's fresh off the court. He's spilling into these emotions. He feels like he could have played better. Just like me, I would take a brunt of that responsibility. The first two games weren't the best for me, especially him scoring, 25-plus points, getting rebounds, getting assists, doing the intangibles. And, for me, I've always felt responsible for getting other guys comfortable out there, too. So, it's on all of us, man. I'm pretty sure if you hear what everybody has to say, they'll say that they can do something better.
All right, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving after Game 2 last night in Boston, where we find Vinny Goodwill. In Boston, I have to ask before we talk about the game, how have you just thoroughly enjoyed, leading question, how have you thoroughly enjoyed your time in this great city?
I mean, well, like I know that whenever a group of us congregate together, and whether it's the NBA Finals or the playoffs or All-Star Weekend, it's going to be a good time no matter where it is, right? We could have a good time in Alaska. So the fact that we're here in Boston didn't stop the show. So, there's been some other things, right? There's been some ghosts in my mentions. You know what I'm saying? There's been some ghosts in my mentions. But other than that, we good here, baby.
I bet. We will talk about that soon. I do want to know what you thought of not just Game 2, but the first two games of the series. Each series, it takes a while, as you pointed out last week. That Game 1, early moments of Game 1, courting, trying to figure out what the other guy is doing. Like think back to heavyweight boxing, even. Those early rounds. Okay, what you gonna do? What you got? Oh, you throw that punch? Okay, if you throw that punch, I'm gonna do this. So Game 1 had its own personality. Vinny, Boston won that game, built a 29-point lead, then shrunk a bit, and then held on at the end. Game 2, a little bit rougher. The Celtics couldn't make their three-pointers. Neither could the Mavericks. And it turned into a very inartistic but yet interesting game. What are your thoughts after seeing these two games?
Well, they're still courting. It's not quite courting anymore, but you're starting to get the boogie a little bit. You know what I mean? Like Game 3 is where we really going to be dancing. We really getting the two-step on. I think the first two games have shown a bunch of different things. Number one is that the Celtics have more ways to beat you. I think we've all known that, even coming into this series, that the Celtics 1 through 6 or 1 through 7 was going to be the superior team. It was just going to be, could they access the greatness? Could they access the versatility? That question was answered in Game 1 with Kristaps Porzingis, right? Coming off the bench with 20 and 6, only playing 20 minutes, changed the complexion. That's a matchup that Dallas cannot counter if Porzingis is healthy and playing that way. Now, we don't know if he's going to be healthy going into Game 3 because he injured himself right at the end of Game 2. The other thing is, you look at guys like Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday's a champion. And I think that goes, we say it, but we don't really explain what that means. A lot of people like to just throw stuff out there and not expound on it, but I'm going to expound on it here. Being a champion means when the moments come up, right? When the critical moments, not necessarily momentum, but just the moments that come up throughout the course of a game where if I make this play, if I get this steal, if I get this stop, we can go on a run for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Like this will carry us for a period of time. And you saw that when he was harassing Luka Doncic and he was harassing PJ Washington when they were trying to dribble up the floor and the shot clock was running down to the 8-second. And then boom, he and Derek White go tag team, right? And next thing you know, he's got a 3 and that lead goes up to a more manageable, a more comfortable spot. So I think Boston has done a better job overall of recognizing the moments. Like these games are being played on their terms, right? From everything from the point of attack up top and the way that their offense is moving, the way that the ball is moving so much so that you don't even think about Jayson Tatum, having like batting averages, as opposed to shooting percentages in these first two games, right? but the terms of engagement are being played on Boston's terms. And I think that's to be expected if they're going to play to their talent. I expect that to change a little bit in game 3, but I think the number one question that's been answered is Boston might be the superior team. Doesn't mean they're automatically going to win the series, even though they're up 2-0. It looks like they should win the series, but they look like the superior basketball team right now.
You know what, Vinny? It's such a great point about moments and champions recognizing moments. And we've talked many times about in the last few weeks about young teams and teams being ahead of schedule. I mean, you had a hilarious interaction with Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards when you mentioned to them skipping a step. They didn't. The funny thing is, you knew more about that than they did from your time of covering basketball. They took it at the literal level, but there's nuance there. There's some depth there that they didn't understand. Why? Because, and I'm not throwing shade, because they're not champions. So they don't understand what that means. Right. Now they will the next time. They understand your question more now as they watch the playoffs. And if they go through it again, they'll get it. And the Celtics didn't understand it 2 years ago against the Warriors, because they didn't have any champions on the roster. They didn't have a Drew Holiday. So they couldn't possibly know why Steve Kerr, in the middle of Game 4, and those who remember, Game 4, Celtics were up 2-1. In Game 4, they had a lead with 5 minutes to play. And maybe they understand now why Steve Kerr was acting with so much urgency there. Why Draymond Green had to go to the bench. Why Steph Curry was really celebrating every basket, asking for every foul that was there, whether they called it or not. He was asking for it because this is a moment. These are these championship moments. And guess what? Warriors won that game and never lost again. I think the Celtics not only are they the superior team, which you pointed out, I think they recognize now they got the champion Holiday and other guys who have not won championships but are so thirsty and are so wounded still from not winning that they will do whatever it takes to win it. And I don't know, is that worth 3 points? Is it worth 5 points? Is it worth the game? I'm not sure, but I think you're seeing that pop up in this series already.
I don't know if it's worth anything tangible. I think it's worth the moments where you exhale, right? Those slight moments. It's 3 seconds left in the quarter. I don't have to worry about this. It's one of those things where you're dribbling the ball up the court and you're Luka Doncic and you turn your head and you don't realize that Jaylen Brown's in your pocket, or you don't realize that Peyton Pritchard is about to get another Tommy point. You know what I mean? Because he's coming behind you. It's those moments that it's like a heightened concentration. You know what I mean? It's a heightened, you know what I compare it to?
What's that?
It's like you're having a great night. You are buzzing, right? You have one of those nights. You done had a little too much to drink, right? And you're like, all I have to do is keep it together until I get home, right? I can sit in this Uber, I can sit in this ride share. All I gotta do is just concentrate on making it home, and then everything else that happens after that happens. If you lose concentration for 1 second, you open in the door and something's coming out, right? You can't lose concentration. And I think from a champion's perspective, Boston is comporting themselves like a group of guys that understands we can't lose focus for 1 minute. And they've had lulls of play, but they haven't had lulls in concentration. You're not going to be great all the time. You can have all the championship awareness and get blown out. You can have all the championship awareness and lose games. It doesn't mean that you lack awareness. It means you just didn't perform. They've been performing and they've been aware in this series. And you said it. They've carried that heartbreak. They've been called chokers and fakers, and us not being able to trust them and us having real trust issues with them. Front runners, all of that, right? All of it. And some of those names, I've called them, right? I've said I have trust issues with the Boston Celtics, but now they're starting to make people believe. I don't think it was unfair to have trust issues with the Boston Celtics. I think it was saying, hey, we need you to show us because you haven't done it before. And now they are halfway there. They are closer now than they've ever been. They just have to finish the job. Now, will they finish the job? It doesn't matter. You don't know, but you're going to Dallas for 2 games, and those 2 games ain't going to be easy.
Okay. All right. Well, a couple of things. So you just said something at the end, which gets my attention. But before you started talking about just focus me and the ride share and the Uber and all that stuff, you really did have a great time in Boston. We don't have to talk about it on there. We don't have to talk about it. You had a great time. You had a great time. I can just tell. Good for you.
I hung with great people.
Yeah, right. Way to share. Way to share with teammates. Okay. You don't think those games? You say you don't think those will be easy games in Dallas. Now it's the finals, so they won't be easy. But I feel like Dallas should have won. Last time we talked, you said it's going to be 1-1 after 2 games. Now, if you're Dallas, that was your game. That was your game last night. Boston shot 10 for 39 from three-point range. Jayson Tatum shot 6 for 22, 1 for 7 from 3. Jaylen Brown, 17 points. Like you really got all the things you need to have. We can't let Jaylen Brown beat us. He didn't. We can't let Jayson Tatum go off scoring. He didn't. Hey, we can't let them just have all these these open threes. You didn't. And you lost. I'm not saying the game's going to be easy.
Are you saying it's over? Are you willing to call this series over? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am. Yes, it is over. It's over because you can't just let them hang around. You got to make them pay for what happened last night. They didn't pay. There are no consequences for 10 for 39 because you're not going to get that again. You just know that's not happening in game 3. Not going to happen. And here's the reason it's not going to happen. If the three-point shot is not falling, you've already shown the Celtics that you can't stop them inside either. Like, look at the Mavericks in the paint. Where's this rim protection? What we got? Where's this? Ooh, wow, they've changed their defensive identity. They picked up Gafford and now the young guy, Lively, and they picked up Washington. Defensively, they're so much better. Not inside or not. Inside, they have not impressed me.
No, they are, but this is, you made the boxing analogy. Styles make fights. And this may very well, from that standpoint, be the worst matchup because what Boston does is they spray the ball around, they get you in rotation, they get you off kilter so you can't go up vertical. You're not in a position where you're standing stationary waiting to contest the shot. You know what I mean? Like with Minnesota, because they played with Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert, one of those guys was going to be down there or somewhere near there all the time. Boston doesn't play that big. You know what I mean? And conversely, Boston can play the type of defense that it wants to play, right? You're not making Boston, you're not compromising Boston on the wings because there's a lot of ISO, there's a lot of Luka dancing and trying to figure out that chess match. They can't get downhill and throw those lobs to Gafford and Lively because they're not being compromised. Boston is not being forced to make decisions because the way that their defense is set up, you need movement on those wings. That's why Golden State gave them problems 2 years ago because you had the Gary Paytons of the world roaming the baseline and they had to account for other players besides the ball handler. Nobody Dallas has is making you account for them when they don't have the ball. And if Kyrie Irving isn't scoring, right? Kyrie Irving is taking reasonably good shots, right? Some of the length may be bothering him, in the paint, but Kyrie's one of the best finishers.
Some open threes, yeah.
A lot of them. I suspect he'll make a lot of, those fortunes will change in game 3. At some point, they're going to have to change, right? The law of average, unless, Michael, and I will introduce this to the conversation, unless Kyrie Irving is just fatigued. Unless Kyrie Irving is gassed and it's got nothing left. And if he's got nothing left, it's going to show when your jumpers come up short. It's going to show when you don't have the lift to finish at the rim. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that you start to look at and you start to wonder, and maybe that's the case. but I'm still waiting on game 3. I'm with you. Dallas blew a golden opportunity in game 2. They should have won that game, but they never got in front of it. They never got control of the game. They were always kind of stalking the game as opposed to having a firm handle on it. And even in the last minute or so, when that was a foul, so what? It was a foul, and the refs missed
on the block?
It. Yeah.
On the block?
That was a foul.
And they got it. Yeah, they should have called it earlier. I mean, like when he's getting pushed in the back before he goes up.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, they missed it. Some great plays down the stretch. I got to say, I should point this out because I have been critical of NBA officials for, say, the last, 20 years. But no, a long time. I've been critical of the officials. I think I like the way the first 2 games have been officiated. I don't see a lot of ticky-tack calls. It's physical. That's how I like my finals games to be played. Just, hey, let them push around a little bit. Let them jostle. Let them find their way, and then we'll let the game become the game. I'm so glad in the first quarter. Bad challenge, by the way, from Dallas. First quarter, they're challenging a foul on a blocked shot where here's my recreation.
Is the hand part of the ball. That's all. That's the old adage, right? It's the hand part of the ball.
Why are you challenging that? You slapped his hand. You slapped it. I mean, it's not like, this first quarter, and even if they overturn it, Boston still has possession. What's going on there? Why would you even challenge that? But for the most part, the officiating has been good. That's right, I said it. The officiating has been good. And here's the opposite of good. Well, no, it's not even the opposite. There's good on the basketball court, and then there's good trouble, as John Lewis used to advocate for. Get yourself into some good trouble. And Vinny Goodwill, I'm just minding my own damn business on Saturday, taking my family to the movies, and my phone blows up because a couple of people tell me, hey, there was some reporter who asked Joe Mazzulla a question, and Mazzulla gave a really awkward answer. I said, some reporter. Then I see the clip, and I said, that's Vinny Goodwill. Vinny Goodwill asking Joe Mazzulla about the significance. And not just Joe Mazzulla, by the way. You asked Adam Silver. You asked Jason Kidd. You asked Joe Mazzulla about the significance. The NBA, coaches, two. Okay, we have it. I don't even have to set it up. Here's Vinny Goodwill asking Joe Mazzulla this question and getting this very, very interesting answer. Here we go.
Hey, Joe, Vince Goodwill, Yahoo Sports. For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have 2 black head coaches. Given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you not see it at all?
I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches.
Okay, so that was the answer from Joe Mazzulla. It kind of hangs there. My first question is, what did you think of the answer, and why was there no follow-up?
Well, for one, I was caught off guard. To be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't expecting, that one, right? And a lot of times you will give someone, as a reporter, you will give someone the space, like to take a beat, right? They will maybe take a dramatic pause to catch themselves, to gather themselves, and extrapolate. So you don't want to interrupt someone while they're in mid-thought, or you don't want to, you know what I'm saying? I want to give them the real estate to do that, especially in something where you're talking about religion, like if I knew I was going to bring religion into the conversation, I would have had a follow-up to it. But since he brought religion to the party, he didn't talk about how religion or faith or whatever he terms it helped him in his walk as a head coach, helped him in his walk, in his plight, in his own plights in this situation, in the circumstances that he took over the job. He issued the statement as a diversionary tactic, which is fine. If you don't want to talk about feeling, the blackness or whatever it is, if you don't see it that way, so be it. We ask for authenticity, right? We ask questions because we want authentic answers. And I asked Jason Kidd an authentic question. He gave me an authentic answer. Same thing with Adam Silver. Joe Mazzulla, I don't know if he gave me an authentic answer. I think he gave me a statement that was meant to shut down any conversation, because had I wanted to be a smartass there, right? Because like I know, we have cards in our back pocket, right? We have cards, and we can say, hey, Joe, what were the circumstances surrounding you embracing Christianity? Or why, Joe, are you unwilling to talk about race? I asked you a question about being black. What does that mean to you? If it doesn't mean something to you, then say it, right? There's a million things that could have been done, but I would have looked like I was trying to use the bully pulpit in that way, right? And you don't want to come across as a media person like you're bullying someone. You present the question, you give them the space to answer, they answer, you moved on. And just because you're being authentic doesn't mean that I don't have my own questions and how I choose to write it and frame it. I just found it very curious, especially in Boston, especially in the NBA that's predominantly black. And if it's the first time since 1975 that you've had two black coaches, that means something to people. Whether Joe Mazzulla likes it or not, he will be symbolic for something in the future, just like he was symbolic for all the people in my mentions yesterday and today, my mentions on Instagram, my private messages, all this other stuff. And don't get me wrong, when you put race and religion together, that is a bonfire, right?
Yeah, I mean, race, religion, politics, you throw it all in there,
But here's the crazy thing. People are treating me like, I guess, like I'm sort of even. They even never asked what type of my own relationship that I have, right? They don't. But they just think that you're attacking religion because I dare try to extrapolate on something that Joe didn't, because Joe left everything open to interpretation. He let everybody be able to misappropriate his words and co-opt his words. And maybe that's what he wanted, right? Maybe he'd rather be co-opted than actually address the actual question at hand. And if that's the case, so be it.
Yeah, you said you look for authentic answers. That's right. Exactly. It makes sense to me. When you do ask questions, a lot of times people rush into, they're afraid of the silence. So even if it's, and the silence, when you ask the question, 5 seconds of silence sometimes feels like 25 seconds. It feels like 35 seconds. It's not. You got to train yourself. You got to discipline yourself to just sit there and be like, I'm uncomfortable with it. I'll wait until I get an answer. And so I agree with your approach there. And I also agree with your statement of authenticity. And I think he gave you, if authenticity is a house, he allowed you into the foyer and no further. And this is what it is. There, for some reason, he's uncomfortable talking about it. Now, I don't know what that reason is, but clearly he's uncomfortable talking about it. Why is he uncomfortable talking about it? Is he uncomfortable because he feels like race should not be a part of it? Is he uncomfortable because he sees himself differently than the way you described? That could be it. Is he uncomfortable because this is not the time for it? Whatever it is, there's some discomfort with Joe Mazzulla in this topic. And I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand. You talk about your mentions. Why do people think that this was an attack on faith, specifically Christianity? How was this an attack? He says, I wonder how many of them were Christian coaches. Now, first of all, before I even get into the content of it, how about the numerology? We're only talking about 2 coaches. I mean, like, if I'm taking it literally, grammatically, it doesn't make sense. It's Casey Jones, right? It's Casey Jones and Al Attles. Yep. So how many of those coaches? You talking about 2 dudes. And like, so if I'm breaking it down literally, and literalists will ruin America, they really will. So I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be that guy. Are you saying, was Casey Jones a Christian? Was Al Attles a Christian? Like, What? That doesn't even make sense. But okay,
Right.
Grammar aside, let's just move grammar to the side. I'm just trying to connect what he's trying to say, and how would people take that as you attacking Christianity when you didn't even bring it up? What are they saying to you? What are people saying in the mentions? I just don't get it. What's their issue?
There's a whole bunch of hard ERs in my mentions.
Oh, from the Christians.
Beta,
From Christians.
yeah. From the so-called Christians, child of God, from people who have the American flag or dog abbeys. Now, mind you.
Okay.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear on a bunch of this stuff, right? These are either people who don't read, people who can't read, people who cannot contextualize, or they're probably not even real people. Like, we know that Twitter has become a farm of trolls. You know what I mean? We've seen this dating back to the 2016 election. So I don't want to get so wrapped up in arguing with fake people. You know what I mean? Like, people who are not actually real. Like, they're just pressing the button. Like, there's things that come up when you look at their, profiles. You're like, oh, this isn't a real person. Or maybe this is their backup account or whatever the case may be, like that sort of thing. But never in my piece that I wrote, the accompanying piece that I wrote for Yahoo Sports, people were saying, why does everything have to be about race? Or you're turning everything into a race hustle. I wasn't the person who turned this into that. This was going to be a simple off-day story, just talking about how far the league has come, how Adam Silver feels about it, how Jason Kidd feels about it. You don't know how these figures feel about it. And had I not asked Joe Mazzulla, a 35-year-old Black and Italian man, you know what I mean? A man who has a black, clearly black genes and Italian genes, how it feels, then I'm making that decision for him, right? And we're told, as journalists, never make a decision for your subject. Never assume. So even though I asked Adam Silver and gave me a great answer, Jason Kidd gave me a great answer, let me ask Joe Mazzulla about this. Let me just see. I'm just trying to complete the story and figure out, okay, once I get this answer, I'll go where I'll go. So getting this answer completely changed the tone of what I was going to write, and thus introduced all the bad actors, right? The right-wingers, the ultra-religious folks, when I actually attacked none of those people. I didn't even attack white folks in my piece. I said Boston has an ugly history of race, which they do, right? For whatever reason, Boston seems to ignore. It's almost like, when will you let it go? When y'all acknowledge it? You know what I mean? Like, when will you stop? When will you stop talking about, the funny thing for me, Michael, is people will say, if you just stop talking about race, it'll go away. Is that the world I live in?
And also,
is that the world you live in?
No, it's not. And here's the thing. This city, which I love, Boston, this city is distinct for many reasons, but one of them is that it is a historical place. So Boston, there's a whole cottage industry off of history. I mean, there's a Freedom Trail. You go down around the North End. There's Paul Revere's house. There are all these historical Bunker Hill. There are all these historical places. And yet, when you talk about the history of race in Boston, some people will come to you and say, well, why are you bringing it up? Well, why are you bringing up other things? So you can only bring up history that you have made money off of, or history that you think is appropriate. But if it's history that tends to frame Boston in a light that you don't want it to be in, you say that's no longer, that's the past. Well, it's all the past. A lot of it's the past. Hey, this city's been around since 1635. There's a lot of history here that we talk about. Good, bad, neutral, ugly,
why can't we talk about it elsewhere? And here's my thing, Michael, not to cut you off, because I want you to keep cooking.
Yeah.
Why can't we talk about it in Detroit? We talk about in Detroit the race riots of 1967, right?
Yeah.
That basically turned the city from city against suburb, right? Basically started everything. There was a whole freeway created in Chicago that instituted redlining during that era. Every other city can acknowledge and talk about, maybe not talk about it proudly, maybe it's in corners of restaurants that you don't like to talk about. You know, you like me on that wall, you need me on that wall. Why can't we discuss it, talk about it whenever it comes up? Nobody's saying it's Tuesday, let's just bring up Boston's ugly racial history. But if something like that, if the subject, I don't say demands it, but if the subject of the day sort of brings about, hey, we can have this conversation in a way. Like the thing with D. Brown getting pulled over in 1990 and Wellesley,
Yep.
or what is that what it's called? Wellesley?
Wellesley.
Yep, right.
Happened in Wellesley.
Right? When that happened and people, you know, like why would you bring it up? Why would I bring it up? It happened. You know what I mean? It legit happened. Go look it up. Like police pulled guns on him and his fiance at the time because they thought he was a bank robber. Right? You want to pretend that stuff doesn't happen, and it doesn't. I'm not saying people today in 2024 have to account for what happened in 1990. That's ridiculous. But it is part of the fabric of how a city looks at itself and how the world looks at a city. And when you bring the NBA Finals to this city again, because we might wind up being here again, and it's two black coaches, of course, all these things come into play. It's not blame, it's acknowledgement, it's color, it's texture.
Well, I got a few things before we take a break. A few things I think you'll enjoy. Number one, I think Joe Mazzulla will revisit that topic. Maybe not with you, but he does a radio interview in Boston weekly. I think he'll revisit the topic. I think he will eventually elaborate. I think he'll elaborate on it in some way. That's my prediction. That's one. Two, it's interesting. Now, you'll love this one. D. Brown loves Boston. He loves Boston. But at the time, he was not loving Boston when that happened. The enjoyment part, and then we can look back with a smile because, everything, it did not turn into what it could have been a lot worse. But police said they were looking for somebody. And D. Brown was a suspect. I just want to point out to you that the suspect was Michael Smith's complexion. And D. Brown is my complexion. And so they confused the person they were looking for with D. Brown. Now, isn't that crazy?
Oh, so you mean the suspect was between 5'2" and 7'9"? Is that what you're saying? A wide spectrum.
Hey, the whole service thing. Hey, we'll be there between like 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Just somewhere in there. Just be ready between 8 and 2. Somebody
and to be funny. Here's the be fun thing, Michael Holley, and I mean this. There were some really cool black spots, or just spots. There's some areas, great areas. Like there's a particular restaurant that we would go to in what you would call Black Boston. It's closed, I guess, for remodeling right now. And Gary Washburn from the Boston Globe, he had another few spots for us to go to. Had a great time. You know what I mean? Good people around, haven't really experienced anything negative, haven't had anybody. Look, I'm not Kyrie Irving. Anybody walking up to me saying F you, Vinny, like that ain't really how like my experience in Boston is. So I can crack a joke and everything else about my time. But I've had a good time here. And I know a lot of people like you who love this city. I get that. I appreciate that.
All right. And here's the final thing. This is what I would have said to Joe Mazzulla. I would have gone in a different direction. I would say, Joe, since 1975, okay, this is the first time since 1975 that two black head coaches have been leading their teams in the NBA Finals. And just like in 1975, this series is going to end in a sweep, just like it did in 75. That's the only reason. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. It's going to end in a sweep, just like it did then. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. I think we're going to talk.
That's cute.
I think we're going to talk to Natalie Esquire about some issues, basketball issues, some good stuff. It's going to be a sweep, by the way. I told you Celtics in 5. I'm going off that. It's a sweep.
Oh, I like it.
Well, Jaylen's their best player, so just looking at what he does defensively, he picked up Luka full court. He got to the free throw line. He did everything, and that's what your best player does.
This is the first I'm hearing it, but I mean, I don't think he's lying. I think JB he's been aggressive in every single way. He's been getting to the paint, getting to the free throw line, also making plays for other people, and then he's guarding Luka. He's guarding the best player. I've been on teams where just any team, where does your best player have such a heavy load on the offensive end, and then a heavy, just as equal heavy load on the defensive end? That's hard to do. I feel like people kind of took that out of context, and I've been hearing that I prefer JB over JT, and that's not what that was. I like to praise my teammates. I like to praise my teammates when they're playing well, and I feel like that's what I did my best to do. I do not prefer one or the other. I prefer both. Both of them are superstars, and it's being shown out here on the biggest stage in the world.
All right, Vinny Goodwill, Natalie Esquire here. So this has become a thing a little bit, and I was just trying to figure out earlier today when this became such a thing in the NBA, in NBA circles, where not only do we have to recognize the best player, but saying one guy is the best and can really be a political statement. This has become a talking point that I think has picked up lately, and it's heavy. There's so much heaviness to it that Drew Holiday had to come back and clarify a fairly innocuous interview just to be clear that I have no preference. I am neutral in this. I love JB. I love JT. So let's start with Jason Kidd, Natalie. I know what Jason Kidd was trying to do. He was trying to resurrect something there about the best player and on and on. What did you think about the entire unfolding of events there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jason Kidd knew what he was doing, right? It's a little gamesmanship on his part, right? Maybe cause a little something. But to me, you tell me who you think the best player is by your coverages. And so I think, in my opinion, I still think Jayson Tatum is the Celtics' best player. I'm happy to see Jaylen Brown getting recognition that I feel is long overdue for him, and people just acknowledging how good of a player he is. We've gone from the Jays can't work together, they need to be separated, to this. He was, in his opinion and in mine, snubbed, right, for an all-NBA team. And so I think this is good, but I think it's now going a little too far, and I rarely ever agree with Gil, but on his podcast, he was talking about this because, and I think I have a unique sensitivity to this as a Steph Curry fan, but it's we're looking at who's putting up all the stats and not looking at how the main player is being guarded, how the best player is being guarded, what they're trying to do to stop that player, right? And so to me, like I say, with your coverages, you tell me who you think the best player is. The fact that Jaylen Brown can make them pay for how Jayson Tatum is guarded is great. That's what helps to make this team get to another level. But I think this discourse has gone a little bit extreme, and I think the Western Conference Finals MVP didn't do much to help it, because I think it's been a thing. It's always been there in the background, but I feel like it really picked up steam there. And I think Jayson Tatum also should have won that. It was a very close vote. It was a 1 vote difference between the media. In my opinion, when I looked at that, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, I don't know who the voters were, or I don't remember them rather, but some media members I think really care about moments, especially in the postseason. And I thought Jaylen Brown had the better quote unquote moments, but I still think Jayson Tatum was the best player on the floor in that series. But I think that really helped to add steam to this discussion.
I don't think that, how do I put this? I don't think that Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown, it has to be about who's the better player. I think we can say that Jayson Tatum is the better player. Jaylen Brown is playing better. Those two things can be true. You can be the best player and not playing to your apex as far as how efficient you're playing,
For sure.
what you're doing on defense, all that. Jaylen Brown right now has been playing as complete of a brand of basketball. Like, I know he had some turnovers last night, but the focus that he's played with, the responsibility of, like Drew Holiday said, of having to defend a guy like Luka Doncic and harassing him up the floor, like that takes a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
And as far as picking somebody up full court, that's 98 feet and all this other type of stuff. I think if you have like a playground sort of set up, and you got players on both teams, and I'm the captain, and I'm going to pick my team, I'm going to pick Luka Doncic first, and then I'm probably going to pick Jayson Tatum. But if you're asking me who's playing better basketball, who's in a better rhythm, who's in a better groove, who might be more critical with his performance to the way his team is winning right now, I would say that's Jaylen Brown. And I don't think that is something that is a divisive statement. Like, I come from a school of Detroit Pistons bad boys where Joe Dumars won NBA Finals MVP in 1989, even though Isaiah Thomas was the best player. And I don't think there's any fault or shame in, oh man, this guy has raised his level and emerged at this stage, even though he's not the leader of the team, even though he's not the quote unquote number one guy, but he's elevated his game in such a way that warrants or merits reward and warrants those conversations. I think it's more or less about the emergence of Jaylen Brown than it is even about Jayson Tatum underperforming, even though Jayson Tatum from a shooting standpoint has been underperforming.
For sure.
And let me ask you this, because Natalie, I want to come to you first on this, because okay. I'm wondering, are we to blame as, let's say, fans, media? Are we to blame, or are we basically reflecting and kind of regurgitating, for lack of a better word, what matters to the players? So you mentioned Joe Dumars winning for the Pistons when he wasn't the best player. Natalie, as a Warriors fan, Andre Iguodala, not the best player on the Warriors, but a Finals MVP. And even in Celtics history, like there's a current broadcaster now, Cedric Maxwell, Finals MVP, but he was not the best player on the team with Larry Bird and Kevin McHale.
James Worthy magic. It's happened.
Yeah, same thing. Like, are we making too big of a deal out of it, adding the extra layer, or is this something that matters inside locker rooms and families? They talk about it. Is it affect endorsements and contracts? And is it more important to players or more important to fans and media?
I think it does matter to players. And again, I think I have a very different perspective on this, because over my life, when I grew up watching basketball, Finals MVP didn't mean as much as we've in the last several years made it to be. That wasn't a legacy award. It just wasn't. It was MVP. MVP, like I see Vinny making a face at me. But
Finals MVP means a lot. It's always meant a lot.
That's fine, but I don't think it was a legacy award, and I'm not the only person who has that position. So that's my position. But it didn't have, like, when you don't hear any of the guys who have it being like, I have this many Finals MVPs. It's about their rings. It's about their championships. And that's just what it's always been. So I'm not saying that the award didn't matter. I'm just saying it was always the MVP. The full season award. That was the legacy award. That was the one that had the prestige to it, like the real prestige. And that has changed. I'm not going to get into why I think it's changed, but it's changed. And I think...
Well, why not? Get into why. Why do you think it's changed? I want to hear it.
I mean, I do think you could say it goes to Kobe. I think it more goes to Steph, right? Because like with Kobe, I felt it was always he can't win without Shaq. There wasn't like a harping, at least not from my recollection, on Finals MVP. But then when Steph didn't win it with Andre Iguodala, it became like this thing, Finals MVP, Finals MVP, Finals MVP. And it was just like, for one, Andre Iguodala should have never won, but it's this thing that I'm saying with, you had Kawhi Leonard win a Finals MVP, and I feel like there's always some revisionism with him because, like, we could say whatever we want, but Tim Duncan was still the best player on that team, no matter how well Kawhi Leonard did in a few games, right? Like, Magic won his first Finals MVP because Kareem missed a game and he played great. But if Kareem would have played over that series, it was going to be Kareem's. So Finals MVPs are like a very unique thing in terms of how people get it. It's about matchups. Maybe a player shows up really big in a game. It just doesn't reflect a lot of things, and a lot of context is needed for it. And so, now in these last several years, I do feel like there's been just much more emphasis on it. And with the new addition of awards like this Western Conference Finals MVP, right? Like, at least from what I could see, it started a debate. It was like, oh, Jayson, Jaylen. So I do think it means something to these players because we talk about it. And like, I agree with Vinny when he says it shouldn't be a big deal, but it is because we use these awards in legacy conversations. When we talk about players, we use these awards. Yeah. And so that's why this is why I always harp on, like, we have to pick people for the right awards at the time because history doesn't go back. The conversation we were having last week, everyone doesn't get into all this context. As years pass, they just say, this person had this many awards, they did this, they just did that. And all that context gets lost. And like, I would say, yes, I do agree that right now Jaylen Brown is playing better basketball. I don't think that I don't think he was the best player in the last series. I think Jayson Tatum was. I think he played better basketball. So over these first 2 games, yes, I do think Jaylen Brown is playing better basketball than Jayson Tatum, but I do think it's still important to recognize Jayson Tatum as the team's best player.
I'm not sure, Michael, and I talked about this yesterday with a friend of mine. When people say the media, I don't always feel like they're talking about us. I feel like they're talking about a certain very small sect, a very small influential block of media, or they're talking about just what they hear on social media and they don't know how to, separate the two. Whenever I've had conversations or talking about it on my podcast or here or wherever, it's never been about Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown. The conversation around those two have been, can you have 2 wings like that and win? And if they're not winning, then what do you do with one or the other? That's not about splitting one up or trying to divide. It's saying, hey, is this situation working with the current context of this team where they had different point guards, they had different coaches, they had different team setups? This is the year where it looked like it's coming together. But yeah, it's still a lot on the line, especially when you consider both guys will be $300 million players, and to allocate that much money to a salary cap in a salary cap league with all the constrictions that are going to be grandfathered in over the next couple of years, I think there is conversations that go on with that, not necessarily divisive, but hey, is this the best usage of our resources? Now to the finals MVP thing, maybe I'm tripping on that, but I definitely thought, now Michael, me and you are more at the same sort of ilk on certain things as far as how back we go in the crates with this stuff. I never looked at finals MVP as a demerit if someone didn't get it. You know what I mean? I never looked at it like, you know what I mean? I never looked at, Magic didn't get it in '88 because Worthy had a triple-double in Game 7, as that wasn't Magic's series. You know what I mean? Magic won finals MVP in '82 with Kareem there. I never looked at Larry Bird not getting it in '81 as a black mark on his record. I don't even look at Steph not getting it in 2015 as a black mark. I agree that he, if you want to say he should have won, cool. I understand the significance of Iguodala, the lineup change, and how that grandfathered an entire brand of basketball, basically with that one move of creating what we know now as the death lineup. It just became something so much greater because of these legacy history conversations, whether it's Kobe or Steph or Michael or LeBron. Like, is that something that we've always talked about as a demerit, or did we say, hey, this dude played and owned the series and it's worth that? Because I do think Kawhi Leonard in 2014, even though Tim Duncan was everything it revolved around, Kawhi Leonard owned that series with what he did on both ends of the floor.
He owned the last few games, and that's what I'm saying. He didn't own the series. Like, he literally had to step up over the last few games, and that's why he won it, and that's fine. I'm not saying he shouldn't have. He didn't own the series. He didn't own the series.
But just as you're giving Jayson Tatum credit for doing things beyond scoring, right, that was the same thing that Kawhi Leonard was doing.
All I'm saying is, but the way we can have this conversation with context and nuance, that doesn't happen as years go by. And I feel like we're honestly saying the same thing. When you say it wasn't a demerit, that's my point. We didn't care. When I say like we didn't care, like I wasn't like, ooh, Magic has this many finals MVPs. It was like, Magic has this many rings. He's the GOAT PG, blah, 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 blah.
I don't think we still care now. I really don't think we care now.
I think finals MVP is discussed a lot more and given much more weight now than it is in the past. And that's all I'm saying.
No, I think it's important, but I think what you're saying, I'm saying it's a booster, not a demerit if you don't.
It was a demerit for Steph. It definitely was.
Yeah, it was.
It was used as a demerit for him. It
was.
No,
I'm not saying it was or wasn't a demerit for Steph.
But it shouldn't have been.
I think the biggest demerit for Steph was 2016, even though he was hurt and everything else. Like, he didn't perform up to his standards. I felt like he performed just fine in the 2015 finals.
But we can't use common sense and contextualize that. So that doesn't matter.
I just said he was hurt.
I heard you, but that's not how people talked about him. And that's the point.
Yeah.
We don't apply context to these situations. And it was used as a demerit against him. I feel much more than it ever was about Kobe. That's why I said I feel like it started with Steph. But I do feel like it's continued on.
You know what it started with?
Emphasizing it.
But it started to change. I think the whole tone of the conversation changed 10 years ago. Probably 10 years ago with the Spurs beating Miami. That great Spurs team, by the way. One of my favorite teams to watch. I think that was a year they played like 10 guys and nobody averaged over 30 minutes a game. Like, they just like a really deep team. Fun team to watch, but it's the combination of, hey, surprise, surprise, Natalie and Vince. I think the conversation changed with LeBron and Steph. So LeBron started it. If you really want to trace, like, where does this start? It's Kawhi getting it because this is the statement, he shut down LeBron.
Right.
You go back and look at the numbers. He did not shut down LeBron.
Exactly.
He didn't.
He slowed him down. He took the numbers down. LeBron didn't average 35. He averaged 27 or 28.
Right.
He didn't shoot 60%. He shot 55%. So it was almost like we had this expectation of what LeBron was going to do. LeBron came in lower than the expectation. You were the guy who guarded LeBron a lot. We're going to give it to you. So
it was hard, and it was really hard to single out one guy in that series. You know what I mean? Like in 2004, the Chauncey Billups MVP could have went to Richard Hamilton. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things that you might close your eyes and, like that Sandra Bullock gif, you close your eyes, you're looking around and you pick a number, you pick a name. You know what I mean? Like that, one of those type of things. And I do agree that LeBron and Steph, and because there is so much conversation about them that has nothing to do with them. And because a lot of people were trying to make LeBron the finals MVP in 2015. There was a few votes for LeBron in 2015 in a series where he shot 39%.
Exactly.
You got to make that make sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. And Steph
they made that award about Andre. They made that award about Andre for Bron. It wasn't even about Andre. It was like to say, he was so good guarding LeBron. That's what it was about. Like, what are we doing? Steph was averaging like 26 points.
I don't mind defense being rewarded. I don't mind.
I'm sorry.
If defense is after the game.
It was a moronic vote.
I'm saying in the general.
I'm sorry. It was a moronic vote.
Sorry. I didn't. Once again.
I hate that.
Once again, so I can be clear, because I don't have an allegiance to Steph or against them or anything else. I'm saying from the standpoint of Michael Holley, you know where I'm going with this. Defense is half the game. I hate that the way that the league has gone now, and they're trying to shift it back a little bit, is that defense counted for maybe 25% of the game. If we're saying the game is being played on both ends, and that is something that is going to be acknowledged, if that's the premise of it, if that's part of the premise, part of the calculus, I can understand the calculus even if I don't agree with it.
But that wasn't real. It was about LeBron. It was like, oh, how he defended Bron. They weren't rewarding defense. It was a way to reward Bron without giving Bron the MVP. And that's what I'm saying.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And I think it's also.
That's a lot to say.
You know, but it's also, I will say this, though. It has been, the award has been weaponized in a way where Steph in 2022 kind of feels like, okay, I finally got it. Hey, what they gonna say now?
That meant something to him. That award meant something to him.
Dude,
it did.
You got four titles, but that's where the conversation became, because you didn't win in the Iguodala year and Kevin Durant won 2. Now you get your 4th. You feel like there's some kind of release because, hey, I finally got my Finals MVP.
It's
yeah,
a
you finally got your
validation.
Finals MVP. But, dog, you got 4 titles. And a lot of people can't say that. That's the story.
Right.
Not that you got your Finals MVP.
Should have always been the story.
The story is that you got your 4th title. I want to get this on here before we get out, though. I want to ask you about it. I got my feelings on it. I want to play the sound first, though. I want to hear Christy Sides and Caitlin Clark, Gary, talking about the Olympics and the so-called snub that Caitlin Clark got from not being named to the team. Here we go.
This elephant in the room is the Team USA roster. Caitlin's not on it. What was your reaction when you saw that list come out yesterday?
Yeah, a little disappointed, of course. She's my player. That's the hardest team in the world to make, right? Like, that is a tough team. She's young. She's going to have so many opportunities in the future.
How did you coach her up through that, or did you talk to her at all through that to make it more of a motivating factor than anything?
Yeah, we talked actually on the bus. She got the call on the bus, and she texted me to let me know. And, I just tried to keep her spirits. I mean, the thing she said was, hey, Coach, they woke a monster, which I thought was awesome.
Is there any silver lining? And she'll get a little bit of rest. She'll be able to work on some things in that 3-week break.
Yeah, I think that is the silver lining. Like, she is going to get some rest.
Caitlin, what was your reaction when you saw the USA team yesterday, the roster come out?
Yeah, I think I'm excited for the girls that are on the team. I know it's the most competitive team in the world, and I know it could have gone either way of me being on the team, me not being on the team. So, I'm excited for them. I'm going to be rooting them on to win gold. I was a kid that grew up watching the Olympics, so it'll be fun to watch them.
What was your level of disappointment not hearing your name on the roster?
Honestly, no disappointment. Like, I think it just gives you something to work for. That's a dream. Hopefully one day I can be there, and I think it's just a little more motivation. You remember that, and hopefully in 4 years, when 4 years comes back around, I can be there.
Did you have a direct conversation with managing director or whomever's over there at USAB recently?
Yeah, they called me and let me know, and before everything came out, which was really respectful of them, and I appreciated that. And they did the same for every girl that made the team or every girl that didn't make the team. There's a lot of players in the Olympic pool, so it wasn't like I was the only one they had to call. They had to make quite a few calls.
All right, Natalie and Vince, let me just say these quick things, and I just want to let you guys cook. One, I think Caitlin Clark most of the time has handled everything well. She has her answers have been good. She has given props to people, flowers to people who deserve their flowers. She, when she has asked questions, has handled it pretty well. Now, people talking about Caitlin Clark, a lot of them act like the earth was just the earth was just discovered, and like this whole new thing has happened, and wow, Caitlin Clark is being victimized, and Caitlin Clark is being snubbed. She's not saying that, but if I see one more headline about a snub, I'm going to lose my mind. Christy Sides got it right. Toughest team in the world to make. They've won 9 out of the last 10 gold medals the U.S. team has. The U.S. team is loaded in the backcourt. I can't take anybody off the team and put Caitlin Clark on the team based on merit. And there are players who didn't make the team who really did get snubbed. Not Caitlin Clark. There's some people who actually got snubbed on this team who were worthy and didn't make it. And the final thing is, if we're going on merit, if we're going on the court, Caitlin Clark should not have been on the team. If you want it to be about publicity, you want it to be about marketing and money, she should have been on the team. So it really depends on what you're into. Natalie, I know you got some thoughts about this. Natalie, you first, then Vince. I just want to hear what you guys have to say about it.
I mean, I think Christy Sides needs to use a little bit more discretion in what she discloses in terms of her conversations between her and Caitlin, because I don't think we needed to know that she claims they've awoken a monster. Like, I rolled my eyes at that, and I feel like many people did. Your losing record should awaken a monster. Like, you have other things that should awaken a monster before it's not making an Olympic team that you don't deserve to be on. Like, you don't deserve. And I think we need to start there, because there's this conversation. It starts at a starting point, like she was supposed to be there and got snubbed. And I find that to be problematic. Right? And so this discourse has been going on all over the weekend. And personally, I was very disappointed in a lot of the commentary that I saw from media. You know, people who are like, I've been, covering the Olympics this long, and this is the worst, snub or worst thing that's ever happened. No, Candace Parker being left off of the last Olympic roster, and Nneka Ogwumike being the only MVP to not make the Olympics were far bigger snubs. That she will end her career never having played in the Olympics for the U.S. is crazy, okay? So don't talk to me about Caitlin Clark, who has years ahead of her, to still make that team. And like, with all due respect, we're talking about the Olympics. When people are like, it's bad for business. People, it's the Olympics. Like, the finals game last year for the woman averaged just under 8 million viewers, right? It's like this is when some of that, with all due respect, American exceptionalism creeps in. I need people to remember a lot of these players already play overseas. Women's basketball players are valued more internationally. Those countries pay their players more. It's like when all that stuff happened with Kennedy and Caitlin last week, China, the team that Kennedy used to play for, they were on social media, like, defending her, right? Like, they know a lot of these players. A lot of these players have played over there. So this thing that you feel like Caitlin Clark's going to bring, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be more viewership in the U.S., but it's just ridiculous. It's the Olympics, okay? People are going to watch. It's the Olympics. It's a country thing. They're going to watch. And Arike is someone who was snubbed. You talked about people who were snubbed. Arike was snubbed. You could say her own, it's a different position, but her own teammate, maybe not a snub, but no one asked about Aaliyah Boston, who, by the way, is someone who was being considered for the team. No questions to her about anything. Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, like, these are real snubs. Skylar Diggins, one could argue. So when people just say this stuff, it's frustrating. It's a lot of people who are not informed on women's basketball. It's some who are supposed to be informed who are saying some ridiculous things. And I need this kind of commentary, or I want it to end.
What do you say, Vince?
Well, my sensibilities are, when I think of USA basketball snubs, I think of one. I only think of one. You know who that is. You know what I mean? So everything
Shaq?
else to me,
Oh, Isaiah. Okay. Isaiah.
I hope that was sarcasm.
Well, people felt like the Leitner thing, but that's what they were talking about. They were comparing that a lot to Caitlin.
Yeah, and the college thing. No, put it like this.
Isaiah.
On a level, Michael Holley, I understood what people were trying to say about maybe as far as it growing the game or the marketing of it. I don't know how much it would have honestly affected it. You know what I mean? I don't know how bigger. I can understand, because she's the biggest star in women's basketball right now. Like, she's a rocket, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, she's shooting up in a way, not that she's the best player or anything close to it, but she's a lightning rod. She's driving eyeballs. She's driving conversation, evidenced by us having this conversation here. I have a problem with the over the top of people, of it coming across like a certain level of grievance. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the thing that I'm like, this doesn't make me feel good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just over the top. I understand that, there's going to be a question about it. I will say this. Ain't this like Diana Taurasi's like 6th Olympics? And you mentioned a lot of the names, and I was thinking like Arike. I was looking at her numbers. I was like, why isn't she going there? Like, at some point, is Diana going to hand over the mantle? I thought that was going to be the last Olympics with her and Sue Bird handing over the mantle to the younger.
Diana ain't handing over nothing, boy.
Out of her cold, dead hands, right? You know what I mean? Like, that ain't happening. But also, I'll tell you this, Michael Holley, I didn't have a problem with her coach saying or disclosing, they just awoke a monster. Caitlin should want to be on the Olympic team. it might not feel like a snub, but she should want to be on the Olympic team.
So do other players.
And as a competitor, it's okay to want that and to feel like you want to go, because you don't know what the world is going to look like in 4 years. Devastating injuries could happen. Anything can happen. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And if you're using that as an extra motivating log on the fire, even if it's just conversation, I really don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to parse her words or that conversation in that way. I think it's okay for competitors to be competitors in that space.
It is, but she's not the only competitor. And I know you're not saying that, and a lot of people are trying to boil that up to compete, but there's a reason why Caitlin didn't say that to the media and said it to her coach. There's a reason why. Her answers were very sort of like canned answers. I wasn't disappointed at all. She probably was, but she didn't say that. And what I'm saying is read the room, right? And, it's just like, it did bother people. I'm one of them. But it did bother people, and it was a conversation.
That actually bothered people?
It did.
Okay,
it came off like entitlement. And that's why I'm saying. And there are a lot of people who made the case like you are, that it's like her being competitive. But this is what I'm saying. Like, she wasn't the only young player, in consideration. She wasn't. And like, it's very funny because like, I also see like a race argument about this. And it's just funny. All the people who have hated DEI for so long now want, DEI. They're telling me there's not enough white players on the team. And I'm like, Diana, Kelsey Plum, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina. Yeah, this is still not enough. So I'm like, hey, great crowd. I'm all for DEI too. But no, like in all seriousness, it's just some things don't need to be disclosed. Like, I understand that she wants to make that Olympic roster, and I'm sure other people do too. But there's a difference in Candace Parker being outraged about being snubbed, and a difference in Nneka being snubbed, and a difference in Caitlin Clark, right? Like, I'm sorry, she hasn't earned it yet at that level.
Not yet.
And so when you say something like that, when it's just like, it's a woken up monster, inherently in that, there's a sense of like entitlement, like I was supposed to be there. I'm not saying she like.
I don't know. But I would think for her, I know from a competitive standpoint, she could just look at, hey, maybe I want to be there. I want to be there. And
for
damn
sure.
it, I'm gonna get to the point where they say
Absolutely.
they'll never be able to leave me off this team again. And maybe like if you say they've awoken a monster, both things could be true. It could be, I don't deserve to be there, but now since they just splashed water in my face, okay, watch out. Now I'm awake.
Absolutely.
Now I'm driven to do this damn thing.
But we don't have the context because she didn't say it. Her coach did. And that's why I'm saying, like, you were better off just not saying things, because just the very last thing I'm going to say is for people who are not familiar with the W and don't understand these things, right? You had Vanessa Nygaard, who is no longer the coach of the Mercury, right? When Diana Taurasi made, and this is not the Olympics, but when she made the All-Star game, when she did not make the All-Star game, but Skylar Diggins did, and they were teammates, the coach said, there's not an All-Star game being played because Diana isn't on it, with Skylar Diggins as her teammate on the team. Right? This coach has been advocating a lot for Caitlin, and there's a lot of people who are taking issue with the fact that you don't ever speak up for Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston isn't officiated fairly, but you only tweet about Caitlin. Aaliyah Boston also could have been on the Olympic team. There's no mention of Aaliyah Boston, right? It's rubbing people the wrong way. And I want to be clear, Aaliyah Boston was an all-star starter last season. Aaliyah Boston was Rookie of the Year. Aaliyah Boston was a #1 pick, just like Caitlin, and all of her numbers are down. By all measures, she's not performing to her level, and it's because Caitlin Clark has come to the team. They have to figure that out, but that is a coaching failure until you figure out how to maximize these two great talents. So it feels and it looks to many like you are favoring one player over another. Aaliyah Boston is only in her second year. She's not some seasoned vet, and I need to remind people of that. She's only a few years older than Caitlin Clark. So both of these players still need to be nurtured. Both of them still need to be poured into. And so when you keep having certain commentary and getting outraged, but only over one player, it's rubbing people the wrong way. So I'm just saying she needs to be aware of optics, because that's sort of what's fueling some of these other conversations that are going on.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out tonight. Connecticut Sun take on the Indiana Fever, or I say the Indiana Fever take on the Connecticut Sun. Either way you want to look at it. Aaliyah Boston will be out there tonight. Caitlin Clark will as well. As for us, okay, we got a party. The next time you all see us, you're going to see us at a party. There's a party. I don't know if you're coming, Vinny, on Wednesday. You'll be in, well, you can't come to the party because you'll be in Dallas covering the NBA Finals. But we're going to have a party starting at 8:20. Check us out. Brother from another. Everybody's invited. Everybody's invited. Natalie mentioned DEI earlier. We do DEI the right way. We invite everybody. Every damn body. Anybody who wants to come.
Even the religious right.
Hey, that's right. Religious right. Religious right, religious left. The agnostics, the atheists.
The ghost can come too. The ghost can come too, Michael Holley.
So you ain't right. You ain't right. That's the problem with you. You ain't right. Anyway, come to our party on Wednesday. We'll see y'all later. Thanks for hanging out. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.